That's kind of important. Okay. And thank you so much for joining us as the Fullerton Collaborative does our monthly meeting. My name is Deborah Stout. I'm the Executive Director of the Fullerton Collaborative, and I do have the other hat of being a faculty at Cal State University Fullerton in the Child and Adolescent Studies Development and also Counseling Department. I'm going to go ahead and turn you over to Leanna, who is our fearless leader of the board. Leanna?
Thank you so much, Debbie, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on Valentine's Day. I hope you are all enjoying your day and also enjoyed your weekend. We're really looking forward to what we're presenting today and have to share with you. So if you have any questions throughout, please just go ahead and put those in the chat if you think of things before we open it up for questions. But during all the different segments, we will be opening it up for questions if you have any. So without any further ado, I have the great pleasure of turning over the meeting to Christian Esteban from Hoyer Scholars. He's also the co-chair of the Next Gen subcommittee for Next Gen Youth Empowerment. So they're going to be bringing to light some subject matter that they're really focusing on in this year in 2020. And they're going to be sharing that with us. So thank you so much, Christian.
Of course. Thank you, Leanna, and everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for being here today. We have a really wonderful program, and we're going to be hearing from one of our Next Gen partners in just a few moments. But first, I'm going to give just a quick Next Gen update and share why our program today, Human Trafficking, is taking center stage as a Next Gen priority. So Next Gen, if you're not familiar, it's a community of youth-serving nonprofit leaders. Our network gathers every other month on the first Tuesday at 10 a.m. So if you represent a youth-serving organization, I know many of you do, we ask that you attend our next meeting or send somebody from your organization to attend our next Gen gathering on Tuesday, March 1st. So you can email me or you can email Bev Berryman, who is my co-chair. Bev, could I ask you to drop your email in the chat? So you could email myself or Bev to be added to our email list and receive meeting details and some other updates from our community. During Next Gen gatherings, youth-serving nonprofit leaders have the chance to share resources with one another, make referrals to one another's communities, and create opportunities to collaborate with one another. So making connections through Next Gen helps nonprofit leaders expand our reach by really leveraging the wealth of knowledge and resources that, as you well know, already exist in our shared nonprofit community. So what I'm excited to share with everyone about Next Gen is that we're currently collaborating on 2 community youth initiatives this year. So number 1, Next Gen, we're working with community partners to develop a youth council, which is going to be a group of local high school and college students who will serve as a youth voice in our collaborative work in the community. So pretty cool. And then number 2, our second initiative this year. If you're not familiar, every year Next Gen has one focus area for our collective work in the community. More recently, as many of you know, it's revolved around workforce development. So in 2022, our focus is going to be on human trafficking youth education. We're partnering with Live to Free, an anti-human trafficking education program, to deliver awareness presentations to each of our Next Gen partner communities in the coming year. As many of you are already aware, this issue of human trafficking is right in our own backyard. According to an LA Times article published in the last year, an Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force was formed to combat human trafficking in Orange County, which attracts the crime with its high tourism and affluent communities. According to a report issued by the task force, the majority of victims of human trafficking between 2016 and 2020 were Black and Latino. The report says human trafficking crosses all racial, ethnic, gender, socioeconomic, and cultural lines. Human trafficking is about profit and abuse. It does not discriminate as long as it can sell. While it is important to emphasize that anyone can be a victim of trafficking, it is equally important to understand how racial and cultural dynamics intersect with human trafficking. So with that being said, today as community leaders, we're all going to learn a little bit more about how this issue impacts our community and our youth. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to our Next Gen co-chair, partner in crime, Bev Berryman. Bev?
Thank you, Christian. I apologize for not being on camera. I, for some reason, cannot get my camera to work today. So again, I apologize. I can't look at you guys all in your eyes. So I get the privilege to introduce our special guest today, Ruthie Hanchett, who is a leader and advocate in the field of children and women's rights, human trafficking, and gender equality. While working for World Vision International from 2004 to 2013, which is crazy because she doesn't look that old, she regularly represented the organization to global political leaders, the UN Human Rights Council, UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, UN Girls Education Initiative, and the NGO Advisory Council on Violence Against Children. One of her favorite responsibilities was enabling children and youth around the globe to speak out for justice. Ruthie is currently an adjunct professor of human trafficking at Vanguard University, serving on the board of Vanguard University's Global Center for Women and Justice, and the coach of Vanguard's Live to Free student club, which trains hundreds of students on human trafficking every year. Ruthie is also the founder of the Fullerton Human Trafficking Partnership and was proud to represent the partnership when the City of Fullerton Council recognized Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January 2020. Ruthie often lectures and speaks locally and internationally on issues related to human trafficking, justice, prevention, and child abuse, and especially now, or especially how youth and communities can be empowered to end exploitation. Ruthie is a volunteer with the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force, her local church and food bank, and she also serves as a PTA vice president at Raymond Elementary, where her daughters attend the Dual Language Academy. She's a wife and mother and loves living in Fullerton. It's my honor again to introduce to you Ruthie Hanchett. Ruthie, take it away.
Thank you, Bev. I appreciate that. And it's nice to see so many faces that I recognize today, a lot of partners and people we've been in this work together. And so, thank you for this chance to share a little bit more about what I do and how we can work together to especially focus on empowering our youth to resist and be protected, and then even fight against human trafficking. So I am, hopefully sharing my slides. Let me get these going from the beginning. So you're hopefully able to see my blue slide here. Let's go back there. Debbie, are you seeing a blue slide, introduction to human trafficking?
You are all good.
Okay, great, good. And Bev already introduced me, so I don't think I need to say much more. Other than, it's a pleasure to be here. And I know many of you, we have worked together in the past, especially informing and then working in the Fullerton Anti-Human Trafficking Partnership. That group has been a little bit less active since COVID, as I'm sure many of us have been in that hard stage of figuring out what to do and how to do it well. But the main purpose of that group is just to support the collaborative and the NGOs and the partners that are working to fight against human trafficking here in Fullerton, and to be a place where we can share information and partnership and support one another. So I'm excited to see how that can be expanded with the Next Gen group going forward. So I wanted to start by just asking us to think about, and maybe this is a rhetorical question, if you want to put it in the chat in your response, you can do that too. But when we think about the words human trafficking, what do you envision? What kind of images come to your mind? Do you think about maybe a child kidnapped far away in a faraway country? Or maybe a woman chained in a basement, as some of these images show? Or perhaps a person picking strawberries in a field here in Southern California. These are some images that I pulled up when I just did a simple Google search on the internet for human trafficking. And unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation circulating on the internet, on social media, about human trafficking. And these sorts of images, which are all too common, often are misleading, and they can keep us from really understanding what's going on and even recognizing human trafficking when it's happening in our own communities. Because most of the victims of human trafficking are not in chains, they're not hidden in basements. Instead, it's the psychological ties. It's the coercion, the fear, the violence that keeps them constrained in situations of abuse and exploitation. And it's oftentimes these assumptions that keep us from really recognizing the victims who may even be living and working in our own communities. So these images are not helpful. But what I want to suggest is instead we take a different look. Because in the United States, in many of the places around the world, the people who are involved in modern day slavery, those who are enslaved, oftentimes are doing what looks like legal work. They may be working in the restaurants where we eat. They may be working in factories to make the clothes we wear, or they could even be selling sex on the streets of our communities. The jobs they do oftentimes look like legal work. So it takes a lot more effort and an investigation to better understand what's really going on behind the surface. Just in the United States, some of the top places and industries where we know there's documented slave labor include first, agriculture. It's the food we eat, the cotton on our clothes, the things we use that are made, grown, picked, and processed by people in slavery. It includes factories. The third is domestic service. So places like nursing homes, people who work in a home cleaning or as nannies, or as my friend Lester, who was rescued out of a trafficking situation here in Orange County, he was trafficked from the Philippines to work in a nursing home in Orange County, where he wasn't allowed to leave for 2 years before he finally became free. People can be trafficked into construction jobs, service jobs in industries like hotels and restaurants and landscaping, and then of course, commercial sex. We are increasingly seeing the internet and social media as a place where people are recruited, as well as bought and sold in commercial sex. So in order to understand where and how trafficking is happening, we really have to dig a little deeper and understand this issue. Now, to look at the definitions of human trafficking, it's a little complex because we're talking about a legal definition, but we want to think about human trafficking is when someone is recruited, transported, provided, or obtained that person through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the 3 key terms. And then that person might be used for commercial sex or labor. So basically, it's when someone else profits off of the work of another person. And so when we're looking at the legal definition and what qualifies as human trafficking, we really come back to those means, those 3 areas, and ask, how did the trafficker get this person to work for them or to sell sex for them and make money off of them? And usually it comes down to force, which is violence, or the use or threat of violence. Oftentimes not even just to the person that they're trafficking, but to their family and friends whom they care about. It could be fraud, which is tricking somebody. It oftentimes begins with offering a job and then never fulfilling the promises of that job, or changing the conditions or the situation of that job, or never actually paying the person for the work they do. And then the third piece is that coercion, which can be any time there's use of a power dynamic of one person having power over the other person. It can look like adults over children, but oftentimes it looks like a romantic relationship where someone thinks that they're in love, that they have a connection to a person, and then that person, the trafficker, uses that romantic relationship and that connection to have power over the person, oftentimes forcing them into a situation of commercial sex. It's anytime someone is making money off of the work or the sex of another person and exploiting them for their work. But when it comes to understanding and defining human trafficking, the one big exception is when we're talking about children. When we talk about minors, there is no need to prove force, fraud, or coercion, because it's understood that children don't have the same power as adults, and they cannot legally consent to commercial sex. So anytime we see a child that's engaged in commercial sex, whether it's prostitution, pornography, strip clubs, things like that, there's no need to prove that they didn't have a choice, right? Any child who's used in that way is considered a victim of human trafficking. So I want to start with kind of a big picture and then work our way down to the local and see what that looks like. So when we think about the large global picture of what is going on with human trafficking, we know that our best estimate is there are about 40 million people involved in modern day slavery and human trafficking around the globe today. That's more than the population of California. 40 million people that are exploited in this crime. And the ways in which they are, the context really changes kind of the details. But we know that the majority of the people, the biggest group, are exploited in their labor, the work that they're forced to do for little or no pay. But there are also other forms of human trafficking and exploitation. Certainly sexual exploitation is the other largest group. But people can be exploited and trafficked as child soldiers, boys and girls that are forced into armed conflict. They are oftentimes, people are exploited in forced begging and even large rings of forcing people on the streets to ask for money, and then that money is controlled by traffickers. Forced marriage and child marriage is another major area that falls within the definition of human trafficking. And the estimate is up to 15 million women and girls, especially around the globe, are engaged in this form of exploitation. And then selling of children. This can be done either for child labor, for child sexual exploitation, but we also see fraudulent adoptions as a form of human trafficking. And then finally, the smallest area I would say is organ trafficking. It falls within this definition. It's a lot less common here in the United States, but there are still places around the globe, especially where people experience great poverty and inequality, where people are oftentimes tricked or offered large sums of money and part of a trafficking ring that trades in human organs. So then if we look at what's going on in the United States, we get a lot of our information from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Now, this hotline takes calls from around the country 24/7 in multiple languages, and it's there to provide support for victims who are calling for help, as well as the community that wants to report anything they see that may be suspicious and might be human trafficking. And we know that in the over a decade, that the trafficking hotline has been in effect. At least 23,000 survivors of human trafficking have been identified and helped here in the United States. When we look at the statistics, the big numbers, we know that most of the victims who've been found and helped were adults, were female, and were Latina. And most of those were trafficked for the purpose of sexual exploitation. California leads the country with the most reported or identified cases of human trafficking. And in 2020, there was 1,330 cases reported just from California. Texas is the second state with the highest numbers reported. In 2020, the National Human Trafficking Hotline had over 51,000 contacts, calls, and texts for people seeking to identify trafficking victims. And then they were able, through those, to help over 10,000 cases of human trafficking here in the United States. And what we learned from that data is that most of the people that are seeking help were exploited through sex trafficking, many of them exploited in pornography. But also labor trafficking is actually growing in the ways that we're identifying it. And the number one way that people are trafficked in labor is domestic work. The good news is that we are identifying more and more people and getting them help. Police are getting better trained at investigating. People in the community are becoming better at recognizing the signs and calling. And even survivors themselves are the ones that are seeking help. They are now the top type of caller or text to the hotline to seek help as victims themselves wanting support. In fact, a friend of mine who works with the Salvation Army was able to support a woman here in Fullerton a few years ago to leave her slavery situation after 11 years of living and working as a domestic servant and nanny here in a Fullerton neighborhood. She had left the Philippines with the promise of a job, but was held as a slave in a Fullerton home until through Facebook, she was connected with the human trafficking hotline that eventually led her to have the courage to escape from her trafficker with the help of the Salvation Army and the hotline. So if we look even closer here at Orange County, we can find that we can learn more about the kind of victims that we are finding and helping here in Orange County. We have, fortunately, a very highly functional, as was mentioned earlier, the Human Trafficking Task Force that brings together law enforcement, non-governmental organizations, community groups, faith-based groups, volunteers, and social workers to both create awareness and prevention, but also serve the victims of human trafficking as they recover and on their journey of healing. So since 2017, the Orange County Task Force has identified 494 victims and assisted them. And the statistics that I've listed on this screen are actually just from last week, our most recent information. So if we look at California, again, it's the top state, we're finding that more and more victims are being identified. And when we look at the profile of who are these people, we find that they're mostly American born, so they're not being trafficked from other countries. I mean, they are, but the majority are born in the United States, the majority are female, and up to 30% of them are children. In this slide, I wasn't able to list the ethnicity of the most recent stats, but we know from previous reports that most of the victims found here in Orange County are African American, with Hispanic and white and Asian ethnicities following after that. So, but of course, this is not the full story, because what you look for is often what you find. And we know that many of our resources are going towards finding both commercial sexual exploitation of children and women. And that means that we may be missing some of the labor exploitation that's happening even in our community, because we don't have the same resources dedicated to that work. But I want to just make sure anyone who wants to has a chance right now to take a picture, screenshot of the National Human Trafficking Hotline and also the Orange County information, so that if you have a desire to, I'd advise you to save it in your phone. Save this phone number, the 888-3737-888 phone number, and call it if you ever see something you're suspicious of or concerned about, or pass it on to others who may also. So I'll leave that for a moment just to take a screenshot. But the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force is triggered if someone calls the National Human Trafficking Hotline. If it's something that's happening here in Fullerton or Orange County, they will then most likely either call the task force to respond immediately, or even law enforcement if it is a situation of immediate need. So I know today we're talking about Next Generation Subcommittee and the youth of our community, and how we want to focus in on what we can do to protect them better. So I want to bring our conversation now to the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Because yes, while children may be exploited for their labor in the work, and we do talk about that with my students, we talk about teen jobs and what expectations youth workers can have. The most common way that our young people are exploited in human trafficking is through commercial sexual exploitation. We saw that up to 29% of the survivors of human trafficking here in Orange County were minorities, were girls and boys, and even transgender youth who were exploited in sexual exploitation. And many of the adults that we end up helping, even as adults, will tell us their stories of beginning to be trafficked, of the beginning of that process happening when they were still youth. So it's important that we focus in on what we can do to prevent and support our young people. But the hardest thing when we think about children and youth in our community and how that they're being exploited, I think one of the biggest challenges is the fact that many of the youth who end up being exploited in commercial sex were actually let down by the adults in their lives and their community even before this point. According to studies of survivors of human trafficking, up to 90% of sex trafficking victims were actually victims of sexual abuse and incest as children. So this commercial sexual exploitation, sex for sale, is oftentimes a conclusion of a pattern of abuse and breaking of boundaries that a child has experienced throughout their life. And boys, I want to mention, boys specifically are exploited and abused in these ways as well. And again, we see these oftentimes are associated with patterns of lifelong situations of abuse, of involvement with foster care, and even substance abuse and drug trafficking, which is oftentimes another element in which boys may be engaged and exploited in commercial sexual exploitation. And then if we look at children who identify as LGBTQ, who oftentimes may already have strained relationships with their families, that vulnerability can oftentimes lead them to places where they find themselves living on the streets, away from a safe home environment, and engaged in trading sex for survival on the streets. And then even if poverty and abuse, I mean, I mentioned how they can oftentimes have a role in personal experiences, but we know that up to 98% of sex trafficking victims were involved in the child welfare system previously. So again, these are the kids that are most vulnerable in our communities, who unfortunately experience compounding vulnerabilities and exploitation and abuse. And then finally, if we throw in a discussion about racial inequality and the ways that that contributes, we know that the majority of the children who are exploited in commercial sexual exploitation in the United States are children of color. And in fact, in 2015, over half of the children who were involved in national investigation of commercial sex were African American alone. So these complicated issues of social injustice, of inequality, of poverty, of abuse, really are what make our kids most vulnerable. And these kids really need our compassion and our support. You know, I personally am continually haunted by a memory, a voice of a survivor that I know, and I know she shared with many of us here in Fullerton, is Ori Freeman, who is now an amazing survivor advocate who speaks out on this issue. But she was trafficked here in Fullerton starting at the age of 11. And I will never forget when she tells her story about being a young girl, 12, 13 years old, in the McDonald's on Harbor and Chapman, which is blocks from my home, and how at 6 in the morning, being in McDonald's after a night of being forced to sell sex, you know, she's dressed up, she's got a tattoo of her pimp across her neck. And she said the dirty looks that adults would give her, that they just sort of thought they knew what kind of girl she was, right? But she said, no one asked me, are you okay? No one asked this 13-year-old girl, are you okay? And was there to support her in that most difficult time. So I think it's really critical that we as adults who are serving youth, teachers, youth group leaders, counselors, school site, church members, that we want to think about, how do we serve those kids that most need it? How do we serve the children where home is not a safe place? How do we show up as the safe, consistent, healthy adults in their lives that they need? I think sometimes it's helpful to think about a list of possible indicators so we can be more aware and possibly notice when something is going on with the kids in our lives. But as I put this list out, I want to remind us that there's no guarantee. And just by checking off a list doesn't mean we've necessarily identified abuse or certified that it's not happening, right? The most important thing is that we get to know kids. We notice changes in their behaviors, and we trust our gut when we notice when something is off, right? Nothing can take the place of a trusted adult in a child's life checking in with that child. But if you're someone who works with teens and youth, or you have children in your own life as a parent or grandparent, this is a helpful list to think about possible indicators of commercial sexual exploitation of children. So everything, like I talked about, from history of abuse, visible signs of abuse the child might be experiencing, changes in physical appearance. This especially applies to girls, suddenly having their hair done, their nails done. Oftentimes traffickers are creating a product to sell. So think about it from that perspective. Tattoos and branding may be less common in very young victims, but sometimes it's a way of literally marking ownership of a trafficker or pimp over the product that they're selling. So if you see tattoos that have to do with names or money-making symbols, that can be an indicator. Multiple cell phones is another one. it's a way of a trafficker keeping track of their victims and arranging dates, they call them, but arranging for commercial sex to be sold. Certainly any changes in mental health, from suicide ideation, cutting behaviors consistent with PTSD, unaccounted for cash, someone who suddenly has a lot of cash, especially on the weekends. I think it's really important, those changes in behavior, excessive time on the phone and social media can seem like a lot of teenagers, but it's that secrecy, privacy that we want to pay attention to. And unexplained absences, especially around the weekend. I've heard many survivors share how they were actually enrolled in school while they were being trafficked, whether that's by a family member or what looks like a boyfriend who's a pimp trafficker. If a child is late to school on Monday or absent on Friday and they come in tired on Monday, they may be being trafficked and sold for sex on the weekends, but still coming to school. So noticing those things, paying attention, and asking those questions, checking in with young people is so critical. But the main place that we really need to be paying attention and vigilant with our children is really online, because more and more the internet has become the place, the red light district of our times. It is the place where sex is ranged, where it is bought and sold, and where sex trafficking victims are recruited and groomed into the life. And we all know that our children and youth are under great pressure through social media to act a certain way, look a certain way. Teens get requested to send nudes, to share pics all the time. They get constant direct messages asking for contact or to send information. And traffickers are looking to exploit the vulnerabilities and the insecurities of youth. And more, they're using social media to do that. And we're seeing traffickers recruiting children over Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, online gaming platforms, and dating apps. So we've seen especially a rise recently in what's called sugar dating. This is happening both on college campuses, but also high school campuses. This is not, I mean, it's kind of an old concept, right? But it's this idea that men are looking for companionship with young girls. And there's a promise of dates and gifts and travel and even paying college tuition and rent, but it quickly can turn into not only unequal power dynamics, but really exploitation and abuse. And these quote unquote dating apps are a place where we're seeing more and more exploitation, and even a place where trafficking is happening under the guise of a dating sort of service. The truth is this arrangement is extremely harmful and extremely exploitive, especially for the young girls who oftentimes get wrapped up in it. But our culture promotes it and normalizes it. And so it's really an important message that we can speak to our young people about the dangers and the need to be aware of these issues. And finally, I just want to also stress the importance of the strong connection between pornography and sex trafficking. Many of our survivors of sex trafficking will report how pornography was used both to desensitize them and teach them what was expected of them when people purchased sex. It was also made of them against their will while they were sex trafficking victims. So it's really critical that we speak to young people about the harms of pornography, how there's actually a real person on the other side of the screen, and how we have no idea whether they're willing or if they're being forced to perform in these commercial sex acts. And we need to help our young people understand both the risks for themselves as well as those people who are involved in them. So I have lots of more on how to prevent child sexual abuse. I would love to share. I'm actually looking forward to the Fullerton School District's Champion for Children event in March, where I'll be sharing more on how parents can prevent child sexual abuse, because there's so much we need to do to talk to our youth about these issues. And it's not lost on me that today is Valentine's Day. And I was thinking about just the power of love, right? How many of us can remember that feeling of our first crush, or the first person we felt feelings of romantic love for? And so many of our kids are looking to know that they matter, that they are loved, that they're worthy of love. And unfortunately, traffickers take advantage of that. So it's our job as healthy adults in their lives to seek to build secure relationships with kids, to be a safe person, to show them what healthy relationships look like so that they don't fall for the tricks of the traffickers instead. So I want to leave you with a couple ideas about what you can do about human trafficking. I'll just go through these quickly, but I think the first is really to speak out about the harms of commercial sex and commercial sexual exploitation, including pornography. And we have to be brave enough to have these conversations with our children. Be awkward with young people to have these conversations and speak out about what it means to do real child protection with the adults in our lives as well. The next is to empower and support young people and then continue to learn more about this. So as we've mentioned already, I would love to continue to partner with the collaborative to bring more conversations to young people about human trafficking. So I get to coach college students at Vanguard University. We develop material that's youth friendly, that's made, created by youth for youth to help them understand how to talk about these issues and to protect themselves and their peers. So I'm really excited to bring more of these conversations to Fullerton youth in the future. And I want to also encourage you, I work with Vanguard University Global Center for Women and Justice. We have so many resources to continue to learn and support our community, including over 260 podcasts that have been developed by my boss, Dr. Sandy Morgan, on topics of human trafficking. Free podcasts, take a listen, amazing experts and all perspectives and angles about how we can approach this problem of human trafficking. We also offer online courses for adult professionals who want to continue to grow and learn about human trafficking in their work. And I encourage you, we are going to be having a conference next month. It is the Ensure Justice Conference. We have it every year on human trafficking, but this year specifically is focused on how are our children and how do we build resilience and prevention and awareness with our youth in our community to ensure that their well-being and their rights and they're protected. So we are partnering with Orange County Department of Education. We are making this conference free to parents and teachers and staff of public schools. And we want everyone to be there as much as possible to learn how we can all partner around our children to protect them from human trafficking and exploitation. So I'd love to have you guys there. I know we've got more information we can share about this, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Ruthie, thank you so much for sharing. We'll give 1 or 2 minutes if anybody would like to drop some questions into the chat. And in the meantime, I have 1 or 2 questions, Ruthie, for you. There's so much good information here, and we look forward to sharing these awareness presentations through our partners. If I'm looking for a sense of what it is that you talk about with there's so much of an in-depth conversation to have. Is there a central website or a place where I could find some data? I know I think there's the gcwj.org website, the Global Center for Women and Justice. Would that be a good place to go to kind of get a sense of the content of the presentations?
Yeah, it is. And actually within there, and I'd be happy to send direct links, we actually have a few of our presentations recorded. So I could send, during COVID, we did a how to be safe online kind of Zoom webinar for young people. So I could send a link to that. It's a 20-minute presentation or so. So that would be a good preview. And I'm happy to, send more documents and more recordings. We've over the years, we've developed both a one-time presentation, sort of an hour conversation for young people to learn the basics of human trafficking. I've also done 12-week or semester-long programs with 2 different Santa Ana high schools that build on one another every Friday during lunch, having an hour-long conversation with students. So there are lots of ways to approach this.
That sounds great. And thanks for sharing those resources. I know that with beginning this conversation, it's always good. You present a lot of amazing data that really, and stories that hit close to home, like I think Ori, I believe was her name, such a harrowing story. But I think sharing that information, saying, this is the reality of it, would help drive putting some presentations together. some folks. And then I just have one last question then coming from myself here. So it sounds like with awareness presentations, you're able to obviously you share it with community leaders, you share with youth in the community. Are there opportunities to have awareness presentations for nonprofits like staff and volunteer teams, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to do other presentations. And I have colleagues as well. Like I have colleagues who are more on the aftercare side, who more psychologists and more about trauma informed and how to work with survivors. Yeah, so I'd be happy to provide opportunities for that. Come to the conference. There'll be all kinds of workshops and plenaries and discussions on all different angles of this work. But that's what we do at the Global Center, is really just provide education, awareness, training, opportunities for conversation and learning. So we're happy to do that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ruthie, for being here today. A lot of comments in the chat, and just echoing what Zoot shared. I had a chance to hear you in Rotary last month too, and appreciate you continuing to share this message with the wider Fullerton community. So that being said, everyone, please take those next steps in spreading awareness on this issue. And we from NextGen look forward to connecting with our youth serving organization partners to be able to coordinate some or to get some awareness presentations going with different segments of our community. So that being said, I think I'm going to hand it on back to Liana.
Thank you so much, Christian, and thank you so much, Ruthie. That was really fantastic information for us to see and hear, and have resources to be able to share with our organizations. Next, because it's Love Day, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Williams from OC United to talk about Love Fullerton that's coming up in April. You're muted, Jay.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. Thank you, Ruthie, for sharing. That was great. Do I have the opportunity to share my screen? Deborah?
I believe so. Let me just double check on my end. Yeah, I think
Yeah, it looks like I can. Yep. Okay. So as was mentioned, just wanted to give you a little commercial for Love Fullerton. We're preparing for our 9th year. Believe it or not, we started in 2014. And we really, this year, are seeking to work together with the Fullerton Collaborative. We really want to try to invite all our partners to participate. And some of the ways that you can participate with us is right now in this area where it says submit a project. If you have any kind of ideas that we could offer to our city, this is the place to do it. Click this button. And then it's going to take you to a page and ask you to fill out some details. So we really have this open to the community. It might be a neighbor, it might be a nonprofit, it might be just an aspect of our city, an idea that you have. It might be, Ruthie might think, how do we continue to spread awareness in our city to the issues that we have dealing with human trafficking? How can we create a learning environment, possibly, or as well as a work project? So we have lots of latitude for what those projects are going to look like. So you submit a project here, and that needs to happen by March 1st. So in order for us to have time to make this fall within the details of the event. So our date is April 23rd. The other way, we really want to invite all the partners of our Fullerton Collaborative to participate. At this point in time, we are anticipating doing our full event. So we will be at Fullerton. Our plan is to be at Fullerton College in their quad. We will do we will have our morning festivities that start at 8 o'clock. And then shortly after 9 o'clock, we'll be scattering throughout the city to go to our work projects, where the work time frame will be 9:30 to 12:30. And then following our day of work, we'll come back for a luncheon back to Fullerton College on the campus. And what we're hoping to have is a space for all of our organizations that would like to be there, to have a booth, to be able to give information to our community. We typically have 25 to 3,000 people that participate in Love Fullerton event. And then when we add the other cities that will be participating with us, at times there's potentially 2,000 to 4,000 people that could be around there. So it's a chance to get information about who you are and what you do. We're also exploring the possibility of what a project might look like if we had an awareness day for a number of nonprofits to be able to share your elevator pitch for who you are and what you do. And then participants would be able to ask questions, and then we would actually have some kind of a work project right on site where they could participate in something that would be of benefit to all the organizations represented. So we have, you have the opportunity to come up with some creative ideas. To be honest, let me just show you. So when you click on the volunteer button, that takes you to the projects that we have. And on the 23rd, so you can just see this is what we're just beginning to do the work on, putting the details together. You can't sign up yet. The website won't be live until March the 15th for signups, but you can see there's just lots of ways for people to participate. And in past years, pretty much every one of these spots gets filled. So if we had work for 5,000 people, I'm convinced that 5,000 people would show up. And so it's just how creative can we be to come up with ideas. We'll be on the Fullerton trails like we were last year. We try to work with organizations in our city who are interested. I don't know, this is just kind of giving you a chance to our partners. So if you would like to have a project done at your site, maybe it's something in your office complex that's their work to be done, or you've got creative ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for how we can partner. One of the new projects that we're looking to do is at our local mobile home parks, which is filled with mostly elderly folks. And so we're reaching out to these mobile home parks and offering projects to be done in the homes of some of these families. And then we hope to send some of our students from our local high schools to go and work on these projects. So lots of opportunities. In the chat room was, here, let me pull up our flyer. These will be available. We have postcards that will be ready for pickup next week, and we have posters and postcards that will be available. Scatter these all over the city. So front and back, English and Spanish. And we would love to just have all of our partners with the collaborative to join us and participate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Back
much,
to you,
Jay.
Leanna.
That looks amazing already, how many different projects that you have. So like Jay said, even though there's a lot of projects already up, he said the volunteers they get are the number of projects they have. So please don't hesitate to add to that. And we'll be announcing more in the future about what Jay was talking about with the Fullerton Collaborative supporting this event this year. We're hoping to get all of our membership involved so you have a means of promoting your nonprofit and your organizations to our Fullerton residents who are ready to volunteer and be involved. So you'll have a lot of ability to make direct connections with that volunteer community in Fullerton and families and youth. So we look forward to that in April and working on it more as we get ready for it. So we have just a couple minutes left. We have a couple subcommittee reports to do today. We're going to have to skip our early childhood report because we do not have Trang here or Barry, but we do have Peter Hernandez for our Move More, Eat Healthy Health and Wellness Subcommittee. Do you have any updates for us, Peter?
Yes. So as you all may recall, at the beginning of the year, we launched our Above and Beyond Move More, Eat Healthy challenge focused on promoting mental health resources and mindfulness practices with the city of Fullerton. I just wanted to provide a quick update in regards to where we're at with the pledges for the Fullerton School District. Just to remind everyone, the school that does finish in first place at the end of March will be getting a $250 gift card to be used towards physical activity equipment. So as far as for first place right now, we have Pacific Drive Elementary. Second place is Raymond Elementary, and third place is Valencia Park Elementary. So at this time, I also did want to challenge everyone. If you have not made the commitment yet, I would like to challenge everyone to make that commitment. As I mentioned also, although you might not be attending the school, we are permitting that partners, adults, uncle, grandma, grandpa also partake in the challenge. And so the way that you all can engage in the challenge is to select the school that you would like to support and allocate your commitment and pledge to by visiting our website. So I'll actually go really quick through how to make the pledge and commitment. So all you have to do is just visit. You could either use the QR code on the flyer, or you could visit our website at movemoreeathealthy.com. So this is what the home screen looks like. And to make the commitment for the Above and Beyond Move More Eat Healthy challenge, all you have to do is literally click the challenge sign up link. And then all you would do is fill in the information. So we have the name, contact information, the school you would like to support, the city, and then the goals you would like to commit to. So we have one of 4 different options, but the most important part would be the name of the school. Make sure that you do fill in that information so we are aware of what school you are supporting, and then you would just click submit. And for those of you who may have missed the video of the challenge, we also have that available on our website, just so you can learn a little bit more about the challenge, but I won't play it now because it might take a while. But with that, currently, if we're looking at it citywide, La Habra is in first place. They have 600 pledges. The city of Fullerton is in second. We've had 100 pledges for the city. So please let's continue to promote the challenge, increase awareness. And if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm always at the collaborative and I'm available for any questions. But that's it at the moment. Thank you, Leanna.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to actually add on to that, Peter. I just in the chat, I put the information and also the Zoom link for our next health and wellness meeting, which is this coming Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. We invite the faith leaders as well, because we wanted to have a discussion about how we can help to support the wellness for our congregations and the communities within our faith community. So if you could share with your colleagues, that'd be fabulous. As we look at both health and wellness, including like mental health specifically, and also the health and immunity and vaccine support. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Debbie. And Jason, do you have any updates for us on our homeless? I know things are kind of up and, we have little things that we're trying to pull together different groups and have conversations, but if you have any updates for us to share today, that'd be great.
I don't see him here.
I thought I saw him. I should double checked, but maybe he had to pop off.
Yeah, I don't see him right now.
Okay, that's okay.
So to be announced.
To be announced. We will have more information. We are in the process of working on that this month since we had our board meeting last month. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our meeting. And if we don't have any other questions for our discussions today, please always feel free to reach out to us at any time at the Fullerton Collaborative, whether it's Debbie or myself, and we can help you. Please don't forget to reach out to OC United, and if you have some projects that we can get signed up for Love Fullerton. And if you have any other announcements you wish for us to share, also earlier in the meeting, Debbie put in the sign-up sheet. If maybe Debbie, you want to pop that in one more time right at the end of the meeting. If you haven't, please go to that sign-up sheet, the Google form, and check that you were here for the meeting today, and check if you need us to update your email. We're always accepting new members. So if you have any organizations or community residents or partnerships or businesses that you think would be a good fit for the collaborative, especially with Love Fullerton event coming up, that would be a great way to get engaged in the city. We do plan
Hi,
on. Hello?
this is Paulette Chafee. I wanted to do a shout out for Deborah Stout, who's going to be awarded a commendation at the YWCA virtual event on February 26th, and we're hoping that collaborative members can join virtually and congratulate Deborah for all her good work in the community. It's really great thing.
Thanks, Paulette.
Thank you so much, Paulette, and congratulations, Debbie. It's well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank
know
you.
we do this just because we want to do it, but we do work hard, so
Exactly.
you deserve it.
And I wish you could do it in person. It's all virtual. So, but yes, thank you.
And we will, our plans are, our board has met and talked, and we do plan on March 14th, our next general meeting, to be in person at the Fullerton Library. So we were planning on that for January, but we held off, but we really are looking forward to March. And March, we will be doing a type of state of the community. I know that's around the same time that our mayor is doing the state of the city with the Chamber of Commerce at the college, but we will be doing before that one for just our Fullerton Collaborative membership, and our mayor will be there, and we are hopefully having other city council members in attendance so we can just have an update on what's happening with the city. So we really encourage you to attend that next month in person, and to encourage others to attend. It's going to be very informative, and it will be a chance for us to connect with our neighbor and ask our mayor and ask questions.
I believe we also are going to be live streaming it and virtually if you cannot come in person. But
perfect. And I'm sure through that live stream we'll be able to take questions for the mayor also, as well as from our attendees in person. So. Okay, so with that, I think we're about all ready to wrap up. Again, we appreciate you being here so much today. We appreciate you being members of the collaborative, and we're here for you at any time. If you need something before the next meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to be that backbone organization for you here in the city to help you do the work that you do. So if that's it, Debbie, I think we're good.